When my father was in his late 50s, dad went to America to see his family that he hadn't ever met before, but that he knew about, but that he'd never connected with, right? So dad went over to Laramie, Wyoming, and to Venango, Nebraska, all these places in the Midwest where I've got family. Okay, so when I tell people in Australia, like one side of my family, we're Scottish, but we're pretty much half American, and then the other side, we're Australian. People in Queensland have been arguing, like, this guy's crazy, mate. He's saying his family's half American. His family's got nothing to do with America. His dad was from bloody Pommy guy from Scotland. What's that got to do with America? Hi, family in America. You haven't met me before. This video is for you. This is for post 270 Venango, Nebraska, American Legion, right? So they say, so when my dad was in his 50s, my dad went over to see the family. Mum went over like a week later because mum was like, oh, I don't want to go over and see your family. I don't want to go to America. Fuck that. And dad went over there, and then mum was like, oh, I'm on my way. Mum showed up like a few days later. And then mum and dad went around America, and it was before 9/11. I think it was 1999 or 2000, right? 99, I think, or 98. I think it was 98, 99 when I finished high school, the year that I finished high school, or maybe the next year, or 99, 2000. Mum and dad went to Colorado and all this type of stuff, and they came back, and dad was completely transformed by the situation, and it completely transformed our family's dynamic, because before that, dad didn't really know much about the American family. We knew a lot about the Canadian family, but we didn't really know anything about the American family. So when dad came back, and I was like this punk dude and all the shit, dad came back and gave me like Colorado football jerseys and all this type of stuff, right? American football jerseys and stuff, right? And like American branded stuff from like Venango and from Colorado and stuff, right? And then my dad, I was very close to my dad. I'm junior, okay? So dad immigrated. Dad was born in England. His dad was killed in France. So then he moved to Glasgow. He survived the war in Glasgow with his mother, and then they immigrated to Canada. And then when dad was in Canada, dad crossed the border and he joined the US Marines, but then they found out that he was 15, and then he didn't get very far. He was only in for about a week or something, and they kicked him out. Dad wanted to join the US Marines from like a very young age, right? 15, he tried to join. He ran away from Canada to join the US Marine Corps. Okay. He couldn't join, but he came back. Then he was like a milk delivery man on a Harley Davidson trike in Toronto. He left, went back to Scotland. Not much was going on in Scotland in the post-war time. So he got on in the Navy, got on a ship, traveled around the world, immigrated to Australia in 1970, and then he became a crane driver and stuff. But his dad died in the war, and as you see, my dad was fascinated about it and everything. And there's all this mythos about my grandfather, okay? So what my dad didn't understand until he got to America was that the mythos about my grandfather translated to the family in America too, because apparently my grandfather helped his sister get the money together to move to America, and he encouraged her to move there right before the war and everything, my grandpa. So the family there, like my great aunt, my great aunt, maybe. It was my dad's aunt, so my great aunt, okay? She moved to America during World War II or just before World War II. And so my great-grandfather, Charles MacMillan, the shipwright from, was it John Brown's shipyard or Jim Brown's? I can't remember what name it is, but in Glasgow, the one where HMS Hood and what was it? QE2, right? Queen Elizabeth II, that he built those ships, right? Hood was sunk by Bismarck. Okay. So I heard that he went to like Laramie and like the Wild West places, wherever my family had immigrated to in the 50s to visit my auntie and stuff like that, right? So my auntie, her brother got killed in the war. Her dad was a shipwright and all this stuff. And then she immigrated to America. Okay. So she got married, and then she got married to, I think, to a guy who ended up being a Vietnam vet or something like that, or something in the generation. Like maybe her kids got married to a Vietnam vet or something like that. So I'm young, right? So I'm not 100% sure on exactly that, but on exactly the thing. But I know that the Deeden, Mr. Deeden is married into the MacMillan family or something like that, right? And they've got kids across something, right? And that the MacMillan family in America are familiar about George MacMillan and things concerning my grandfather, George. So if you see, want to see how similar I look to George MacMillan, my grandfather. Doppelganger, right? Pretty much. So Dad came back, and Dad was somebody who used to say shit about America before Dad went to America. Dad went over there, went onto the farms, drank with good old boys that were in the militia and stuff. Found out that the mythos about his father had made it to Nebraska, and like had kind of the military element of our family from that my grandfather had been carried by my grandfather's sister through her kids in America, her boys and stuff, and through her husband and all these type of people, right? So when my dad was over there, he was hanging around at the American Legion Post with Dave Deeden, who's a family member of mine over there, drinking and hanging out with the good old boys, and then learning a whole bunch of stuff. So when Dad came back, Dad told me like the importance of the First Amendment and the Second Amendment. Okay. Dad told me that Australia's a great son. I've spent 37 fucking years here, paid tax and all that shit. But we should have moved to America. That's what he said. It should have stayed in Canada and should have moved to America. I'm sorry to say that. I love Australia, but okay, so what Dad started to teach me, which he always taught me all of the Navy, fleet, air arm stuff, right? So aircraft carrier. My dad was an aircraft handler, somebody who looked after jets and boats and all this type of shit, right? So my dad was always like teaching me to think like that. So everything that's happened here has been like a continuation on from what happened with my grandfather. Like a lot of the events that happened with my grandfather have happened with me here again, like 80 years later, like with my son and with the death of my father and and all these different things, right? It's like things just keep on repeating. Reality just keeps on repeating itself, right? My grandfather was hunted down and killed by the Nazis when he's trying to defend France, right? And I've been dealing with the same reality, right, for years, right, over here. So my dad brought me up to be Australian, but then Dad started to say like, hey, everything's plugged into the fucking military, boy. Hey, like we're designed to plug into America. So that's what you do. You build something that's like all the other things that fucking plug into America with the apparatus, with the military apparatus, son. Okay. So we would be over there doing stuff, and Dad would be saying stuff like he would be when Dad was dribbling shit when he was drunk or talking shit. He'd be like talking to Henshaw about, hey, we don't do things like that. We wouldn't be doing things like that over in America with the militia. Patriots, the militia. We wouldn't be fucking doing stuff like that, eh? Take a fucking Tech 9 to sort something like that out. So these guys thought that my dad was IRA. No, my dad was CFMEU, and then Dad went to America, and then Dad got involved with the veterans movement through my family, and my dad became a member of the militia. So when my dad came back to Australia, my dad encouraged me to do all those security courses and help pay, got me a job so I could fucking pay for all of it. And then he wasn't so serious about counterterrorism and everything because he'd been in the Midwest, and I was arguing with him about it. And then after that, we became Americanized. Like once Dad and I started traveling and everything, he's like Scottish and Australian and everything. But Dad had like a bit of a Midwest swagger or a bit of an American swagger to him, like a Canadian swagger. Like I know it's not, you guys don't see it as the same thing, but like Justin Murtaugh understands. Justin was a Marine, and Justin knew my dad. And Justin knew that my dad was Scottish, but my dad had like this element of his personality that if he started, he went real deep and you couldn't fucking stop. He just went into like, you could see that he grew up in America and in Canada as a kid, like in the years after the war. And throughout my dad's whole entire life. So the reason why I ended up going from like the punk dude who wouldn't go to America, who was sitting over there writing anti-American punk songs, right? Then they came back, and then I fucking pitched the Scarred Hope music to Mash Genie in Lafayette, Indiana. And then he was interested in working with me. And then that worked even more. And people were like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, you're in Brisbane, man. And like, everyone's trying to get out to California. Everyone's trying to get to Philadelphia. Everyone's trying to get to New York. And you're getting somebody who knows John Cougar Mellon, who did John Cougar Mellencamp albums and shit, man, to come and produce like from the Midwest. Midwest is middle America. Like that's like George Bush country. That's what they were saying back then. So this is the thing. Like these guys saw it as like a battle between the left, which they thought was right, and George Bushism, which was wrong. But my family, when they were there and it was during Bush, they didn't get any feeling like there was anything wrong about America. They came back feeling like it. They went from being Australians who hated or Scots who threw shit on America to come back to be completely sold on America, and then completely respectful of our family's connection to America. And then we started to become more American. We started to feel more comfortable about the Americanization of our family type of thing, because it's not fake. It's not forced or anything like that. So with me, I started wearing like Australian Army hats, but and Harley Davidson boots and stuff, right? I started to adopt more of a militia look when I was about 18 or 19. Even in rehearsal, I would always have a cap like this on or something like that. Back in the day, once Dad got back from America, Mum and Dad and Adam got back from America, my brother went over there, and then he came back when I was working on American music, and I was waiting for Mass to come here. And then so like my brother had all these stories about traveling across America in a Greyhound and all this type of stuff, right? So like my family, like we've had different experiences there. I've just had the show business thing. And so this is the thing. I didn't call up my family when I was in Hollywood because I didn't trust those fucking bloodsuckers out in Hollywood, man. I'm not talking about Scott Einbinder. I'm talking about all the other fucking bloodsuckers out there. I didn't want those motherfuckers to know that all I had to do was make a phone call to Venango, Nebraska, and I have a whole bunch of fucking militiamen with machine guns fucking showing up. You know what I mean? Like I didn't want to tell my boss in America that my family's connected to the American Legion and the militia, because my dad went and joined the militia into like 99, 2000. And then after that, my dad started working for these oil and gas companies. Like George W. Bush owned people like George W. Bush owned companies like that, right? Then my family became a big oil and gas family and all that type of shit. So my family, when I was working for America, when I was in America, and then I started to cry all the stuff about 9/11, 10-year anniversary, I watched it again. I had the cry, went all to the churches, all that type of stuff. And then I was like, I have to do something for America. I have to wear a bulletproof vest for America. I have to go and fucking put my life on the line for America. I don't care if I fucking die. It's something that is important enough for me to fucking die for. Like, you don't understand, man. The Bells and the Stewarts and the MacMillans are American. We've been American since before World War II. And we're American because of my grandfather, George. He's actually a very important component of why we became American. So the funny thing about that Bone Squad thing is that, like, we didn't contact the Deedens or Post 270, or we didn't tell in Bone Squad our family side of the American story, right? Because I'm sure we've got missing people in Venango, Nebraska, MIAs, POWs. I'm sure Dave Deeden didn't think that Dave MacMillan Senior's son was going to become like this big mortuary affairs guy chasing MIAs all around the world because of George Bell MacMillan's death. And because of the times that he took my dad out drinking with the good old boys in Venango, Nebraska. Okay. So when I speak with an American accent, they think that I'm fucking faking, man. My family is American. We're half American, technically. If you have a look at, we were Scottish, but the war happened and then all the men died, and then the women survived, and then the women carried one of the surviving women carried the family's blood over to America, and then my dad and his mum, which was like another, not the same family, but his mum was married to my grandpa, who was the MacMillans, right? Bells and MacMillans, right? They moved here, and then my dad had us and stuff, right? Or the kids in England, and then here had us. And then the other family, they went to America. And so like, that's what happened with the MacMillans after George died. Like, George had some survivors. So this is it. There's the Nyes, Stephen Nye and Ray Nye, my cousins over in maybe the Netherlands or in Germany, right? Who were related to my grandfather George's eldest son, George MacMillan Jr., who's my dad's eldest half brother and my dad's only sibling. My dad never met him. We only found out about him. So with my dad's life, there was two important things that happened later in life. One was going to America and finding out a whole bunch of stuff about George that he didn't know before he went to America, and that changed his outlook on the world and on America. And then secondly was finding out about his brother and all that stuff when his brother had died. And he just became like, Dad was very obsessed with the MIA POW American thing. Like, it doesn't matter if we're recovering an American soldier, it doesn't matter if it's this, if we're doing that, it's a good thing for the families. I know, I can tell you, I've been over there, I've been drinking at the American Legion. Okay. So American Legion isn't like the French Foreign Legion, right? It's like Legionnaire's disease, right? Like that Legion, the American Legion, like the veterans and everything, all the veterans of the foreign wars, right? They're cool, man. And my dad, he had that post thing up in the house for years, and he kind of brainwashed us to become more American. So like when I'm fighting here with, and I'm speaking over David Christofouli, Premier and stuff, talking about America all the time and talking about how they're anti-American. And when I've been talking over them and talking about the anti-Semitic thing about my mum's side of the family and everything, like they've been saying my mum's side of the family aren't German Jews and that my dad's side of the family aren't American militiamen from Nebraska, Wyoming, like men and women, right? Okay. You're wrong, guys. Anyway, hey, cousin Dave, I'm sorry to let you know that dad passed away. And if you've heard some of the videos on here, there's a bit of conjecture that he could be alive today if it wasn't for the fact that the Australian government let him die because they didn't understand that Stony Beach Defence Intelligence Agency actually exists, right? But, oh well. Oh well. The MacMillan family still is still around. The Deedon family still around. Okay, so we got to be grateful for that. We've survived a lot of real tough times, right? A lot of death, a lot of heartache, but we're still here. So Americans, they don't know that the secret. Brantley knows it, right? Like I'm a fucking good old boy, and like I love me my guns, I love me my barbecue, I love everything that makes me a redneck in other people's books, right? Even though, I'm not racist or anything, I'm really multicultural and shit, but I love guns. I love the smell of fucking cordite. I love fireworks. I love like freedom stuff, right? Like fun. Like let's go out and shoot some stuff that isn't going to be missed and it's not like going to hurt anybody. Like let's go out and shoot some cans or something like that. You know what I mean? Like I remember in the 80s being able to go out the back of the bush with my uncle and everything with like his Mini 14, like poof, poof, pop, 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 pop. Like if I was over in America, I could be doing that out on the farm with the family and stuff, right? Or at the shooting ranges and everything. But my dad was like, yeah, like after we went over there, my dad's like, yeah, no. There's no way that we would ever live in a country where they won't allow us to have firearms. No, fuck that. If we were living in America and here, we're going to need them soon because the way this country's going. But if we were living in America, we'd have firearms, Davey. I'm telling you, we'd have as many firearms as our family in America has. And our family in America has probably more firearms in the National Guard. But I think they're actually involved in the National Guard. My family are National Guard, Nebraska National Guard, right? And American Legion. So I just want to salute my family over in America. And I know it's been a long while and I talk shit every day and I've kept you guys out of it. But hi, I'm Dave MacMillan Jr. It's a pleasure to meet you. I'm sorry to have met you under the circumstances of telling you about my father's death, but I'm your cousin in Australia and I'm the MIA hunter. So that Hollywood douchebag MIA hunter MacMillan guy actually is your cousin. But I started working with Wounded Warrior before anybody else, as you can see in my documentaries and everything. So why do I have American pride and nationalism? Because of the story of like my grandfather and his sister and how his sister immigrated to America before he died in the war. So that's why, like, it's like, so the Highland Division is completely gone, right? It was done, and then Dad couldn't do the Highland Division thing, but then like my family was a member of the militia and then Vietnam vets and all this type of stuff because the connection from that they brought from Scotland to America and the connection to the Scottish militarism of my grandfather in the Highland Division. So that's why I bleed red, white, and blue, and I can like sometimes be critical of Australia because I'm part American too, technically, because of the immigration patterns of my family. Okay. And then breeding into the American demographic populace, right? Okay. Good day or g'day, right? Guten Tag.